Alrighty.
So let's turn our cameras on. Um I am curious. So I was looking at the chat. I was kind of posting some stuff in the chat in the group chat. Austin, I know you were doing that as well. Is today the day?
That's honestly that's why I spent the last hour trying to check because the last I saw that the B2s were at Hawaii, and then there was some reporting they were approaching Guam. So it depends on when they were at Guam last. If they were at Guam, I was trying to figure out the air, like depending on what speed they're going, stuff that could be halfway to Diego Garcia by now. I mean, it could be. I don't think it's going to be the next few hours because even if they're at Diego Garcia, it's still going to be like a few hours to get to Iran at that point. But it's the fact they're evacuating. I said that in the group chat earlier. They're evacuating Tel Aviv. They're evacuating Amman, which is the capital of Jordan, and then the State Department a few hours before that to put out a thing telling all Americans to leave Iraq. And then the NSC is supposed to meet here in about what time is it?
Is it
40
six?
about 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So I mean the signs are increasing. I mean the reason I'm kind of thinking it's definitely going to be on like a weekend is he wants to time it to where the least amount of damage to the markets. Because I mean, obviously, if they decide to like, okay, well, you attacked us, let's close down the street at Hormuz. That's going to be kind of a major deal.
Yeah.
So I think that part it really depends. I don't think they'll go during the week. So it could be tonight. It could be tomorrow. I don't think it'll be anytime Monday through Friday if they don't do it this weekend. And if they don't do it this weekend, I'm definitely thinking it'll be next weekend.
Yeah. No, I mean
So
I kind of agree on that. Like I was thinking about it. I thought they were going to do it Friday night for those exact reasons that you had mentioned. You give them two
mhm.
days to do a narrative, do all that kind of good stuff, and then, they can kind of, at least kind of like you say, like let it stabilize a little bit. Obviously there's going to be a dip, but kind of let them manage that and probably go out and do like a kind of a propaganda like uh, you know, signaling being like, hey, like either they got Fordo or they didn't, what were the kind of reactions, all that kind of good stuff. And I figured that they would want to do that, say, like they would have done that like Saturday night. And then Sunday they kind of just let things like stabilize in a sense. But they didn't. So I don't know. Like I think given them pulling everybody out, which is exactly what they did when Israel before Israel was going to strike, makes me think that yeah, this could be like the time.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing to watch for is watching the B2s. If
Yeah.
the once so one thing that like I'm pretty sure I sent in the group chat, but like one thing that's really kind of making people kind of question it right now is they've already got the refueling craft like following them, which would kind of
Yeah.
is, so it's kind of like okay, that's a pretty good indicator they're probably got they're probably fully loaded and yeah, that causes more fuel burn, so that's probably why they got the tankers with them. So yeah, I mean that would suggest they're armed and loaded. So I mean, it could be, they could, we've done that before when we invaded Afghanistan. We flew B2 straight from Missouri to Afghanistan. Then we did it again in Iraq, if I believe. So I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
that would kind of fit. So I mean, it could be in the next 12 hours. It could be, next weekend. I don't like, but like, I don't think they're going to do it through the week. That's the one thing I kind of feel reasonably confident on because he is so like you know how he is. He's so attuned to the market. I just can't see it through the week. But yeah, it could be tonight, could be tomorrow, or
Do they have B-52s out there?
they
Or are
do
they just
have.
B2?
They do. Last I checked, had I think it was 4 B2s on Diego Garcia, but you really don't want to use B-52s for this mission. I mean, it's
That's
a
well, that's why I was asking because I'm
yeah.
like, I'm like, if they because I thought they had mobilized some, and I figured maybe that would be like a post, like after they kind of actually take out the air defenses, maybe they would. But that's why when you were saying they started sending the B-2s, I was like, that's the actual indication. Because I'm
Yeah,
like, B-52s, like, great, whatever. But it's like the B-2s, the whole point is that they're stealthy, which means that they could get through the air defense systems and all this other kind of stuff
yeah.
and be able to actually hit the targets that they're wanting to hit. And so that's why when those started getting mobilized, I was like, okay, like this might actually happen because that's the important capability that they need to do this mission.
Yeah, because like the B-52s are just so old now. I mean, they make so they're great if you're fighting insurgency because you can. I mean, obviously there's no real risk at that point to using them. But then in any sort of like modern like air defense situation, they're just they're just not. These are old and slow. So what they mainly use them for now is like the reason those B-52s are there is because when we were bombing the Houthis a couple of months ago, they were using them for that.
Yeah.
But it's so mostly what they use them for now is they load them up with like cruise missiles. So like they're basically like bomb trucks. They don't actually fly over you and bomb. It's like from a distance they'll just launch cruise missiles at you.
Yep.
But with the B-52s, where I don't know if I said in the group chat, but I've been reading like analysis pieces on like, okay, how could this mission look like? And it's very complicated because the Fort Al facility is literally under an entire mountain.
Yep.
And the Pentagon's like, from a lot of the reporting and stuff, which makes sense. They're not really sure if this could work. I mean, so the reporting is they're telling Trump it could work, but then like whistleblowers are like, there's just no way, like, it's under a mountain. Like these bombs just cannot penetrate that deep. So that's why there was talk of the tactical nuclear weapons. But yeah, so like they have to fly over it. They can't just launch cruise missiles at it. Like you have to get a precise hit with like one of these, these GBUs is what they're called.
Yep.
So it's like, that's why they need B-52s. That's the best chance they have to get through air defenses. And one of the things that like people pointed out, which I thought was really interesting. So there had been some speculation for a while. Okay, what is the active U.S. fleet of B-2 bombers? We know they built. It was either 21 or 23. I want to say 21 of them. So when they were bombing the Houthis, they only used 6. So everybody's like, okay, is that just what we have available?
Yeah.
So yeah, so the reporting is from Whitman AFB. They've sent it. I've seen 10 and I've seen 9, and I've also seen 8. But most reporting seems to suggest 9. So if they're sending 9, they use 6 on the Houthis. That would kind of suggest that's all the available B-2s we have. So this is kind of an all or nothing strike. If it don't work, that's kind of it. You use what the resources you have for it.
Well, I don't know if I would say this is all they got, like, but I think it's probably I don't think they're going to deplete all their stockpiles to do this. I think you've got, like you said, like they're probably going to throw 8 or 10 at it and be like, hey, this is our shot, and we're gonna go with it. But I think the most interesting part was kind of like with what you and I think some other people have been saying is it's like they don't even know if this thing's going to work. Even if you drop several of them to work, because it goes in, it creates a hole, and then you keep going.
Yeah, you have to get precise hit after hit after hit in that same spot.
Exactly. And from what I have heard is it's like even the generals are like, oh yeah, this is going to work. But like more skeptical people are like, yeah, I don't know if this thing's going to work. And that's why when you posted that Israel's thinking, the ground and all this other kind of stuff. I don't think Trump's going to do a nuke. I think he knows what that would happen. But I was like, you're almost going to need like ground troops. You're going to need to airborne some people in, basically suicide squad it. Now, I would say the Israelis should do that if they don't have anyone embedded already. But I'm like, that's what you have to do to really get this done, because you can't bank on these bombers to do the job. You could have, I think they developed the missile back in like the early 2000s. It's like back then you probably could have had a little bit more certainty about this, but it's like now it's like they know this is coming.
Yeah.
Like they know that if this is what the US or Israelis are going to do, this is how they're going to do it, and they've been preparing for this. So you have to do almost ground trips at that point.
Yeah, and that's there. I sent in the group chat right before we came on, but now there's reporting that like the Israelis are saying they can't afford to wait much longer for us, so they're saying they'll do like a commando raid or something like that. Now the thing to think about that is, I don't know if you guys remember, but when the embassy crisis happened back in like '79, we tried a commando raid back then. It was Operation Eagle Claw under Jimmy Carter, completely failed. So it's like these are very high risk operations, even in the best of circumstances. And then I feel like I said in the group chat, but I can't remember. But like one thing I've been really trying to watch is like Israeli media, because here in the West, we're getting kind of like a very particular kind of media line. And then you go read, like I've been reading Haaretz, Times of Israel, stuff like that. They're saying a lot of different stuff. So like Ynet News was saying that like based on like what they're getting told by like Israeli officials is like, yeah, their air defense system is starting to really become effective. Like they've kind of recovered from the initial attacks. And like I do know there's been like more and more like videos and like reports, and like the Iranians are really starting to kind of like I don't think they've confirmed shot down any aircraft yet. I mean, they've claimed it, but like there's been several videos and stuff now where they've shot down like their UAV, like Israeli UAVs and stuff. Like I think they at least 2 like major ones I've seen. So it's like they're saying that the Iranian air defense network is coming back. So it's like if you wait till next weekend, you're probably the window is really kind of now.
Yeah.
And then two, the other thing, like the thing like I've been trying to track the most, and that's what I've been posting about the most in the group chat. So like the air defense situation in Israel, like they're burning through so many munitions a day. Like the other day, Wall Street Journal reported from like their sources, like from the assessment of the Israelis and our intelligence agencies, the Iranians have enough missiles they can outlast the air defenses in Israel. So the longer this drags on, the more missiles you're going to start seeing get through the Israeli air defense
Yep.
network. And that's, like yesterday they hit the Ministry of Interior in Haifa. And I don't know if like I really didn't emphasize it enough, you guys, and I really should have. So like Maersk, which is like the largest shipping company in the world, is now telling people to avoid Haifa, which is the biggest port in Israel.
Yep.
That is a very major like economic blow. And then like I-24, which is another Israeli news agency, is now saying they're projecting like they'll have like a major recession next year. So it's like the longer this drags on, the more economic damage it's going to do to Israel. And it's just kind of like it's either get it done now or you're not going to have your opportunity. Because the longer, like, and two, like the other thing I've been really tracking is okay, what are China and Russia doing? Like I've sent you guys those articles where there's been all those, shall we say, interesting flights into Iran from China last few days.
Yep.
And I don't think it's a surprise that those flights have been going on. Then all of a sudden, Iranian air defenses are getting better. Just a coincidence,
No, I mean,
Yeah.
and I was reading something where people had asked, they were like, China, for all we know, is that China is basically doing what they did with Russia, where they're providing, and I think maybe we talked about this in the group chat, maybe even on the last episode, where they're basically supplying, what was it, non-military tech or whatever it is, or something like that.
They call it dual use, so it's kind of like this isn't
Yeah, that's ultimately
officially
what it is,
military,
right? Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
oh, it's radar, and it's like, well, we can use this for aircraft and normal
yeah.
planes, and it's like, oh, and
What do you mean
clothing
it's
and stuff like
military?
that, and like all this other kind of shit. And then I think the big one that I had seen was, and it was particularly with their air defense systems, where it was basically like things to take down drones and that kind of technology. That was kind of like the stuff that they are probably dumping in there, like they did with Russia, to kind of bolster them. Like maybe they're not sending missiles over there yet, but they're supplying just about everything else. Oop, you're muted, Austin.
Okay, so while you were saying that, I just happened to get like a thing on my phone. So the Israelis have claimed they've destroyed like 40% of the Iranian missile launchers. They're called, I can't remember what the acronym fully stands for, but they're called like TELS. It's like TELS. So they claim they've destroyed like 40% of them. Based on the visual evidence, they've got maybe 10%. So somebody was going through like all the footage that's been posted so far, and it was like the Israelis claimed before the operation started they thought the Iranians had like 300, and they've posted verified visual images of 44 getting destroyed. So you're looking at roughly 15% or so now. But
Yeah.
somebody was pointing out we were talking about like the Chinese stuff. Somebody said, okay, I looked up how much a 500 horsepower heavy truck would cost. They're like 45,000 new in China, so a 45K truck, and then you add hydraulic system on it, which is what you need to like raise the missile up, and
Yeah.
the missile does it. So you're looking at like really, if China's supplying them like these aircraft, like it's not impossible the Chinese could very cheaply and easily supply them with new launchers. So that's the other thing. And like I know the IDF, like I think it was their public spokesman came out yesterday and was like, yeah, at this point we kind of accept it'll be like a prolonged campaign, because it's like there's just they're recovering enough, they've got enough missiles left. Like they're saying, from what I've seen, the IDF claims that they've launched or destroyed like 500 missiles, if I'm not mistaken, and then like the pre-war estimate, I'm seeing people say 2,500, but like back in 2021, CENTCOM, which is kind of like the U.S. military overarching structure, was saying 3,000. That was back in 2021. So, and then Netanyahu came out yesterday, I think it was, and claimed they had 28,000. But from what I understand, he was referring to like all missile types. So like not just like long range missiles they can hit Israel with, but it's also like short range stuff. And that's extremely relevant in our case, because I'm sure you've seen the map where it shows like the different ranges of like Iranian like missiles and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean those short range, if you got like tens of thousands of short range missiles, and the Strait of Hormuz is like right there, like I mean, and then the
Well,
other, go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, and I think one important caveat is that that flight, those flights you're talking about was with China.
Hmm.
Pakistan's helping them out too,
Yeah,
and they don't
that's
even, and they border each other, so they're
yeah,
not shipping them, they're not flying them over there. They're probably just busting them in. And so I'm
yeah.
surprised, or at least from what I've seen. Now, this it could have been out there. There's probably someone who could comment on that that's more of an authority than me. But I would be interested to see, okay, what do the satellite images look like from going through Baluchistan up through into
Mhm.
Iran? Like, what do we see there?
That's
Because
a good
I think,
question.
hey, maybe, you know, Pakistan's known for having a shit ton of missiles. So
Mhm.
it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if China's sending the non-military stuff, being like, "Oh, hey, we're not doing anything," but then Pakistan is sending
Yeah.
them right down through there, and you can't
Well,
track that in flight. You have to have satellite imagery. So I'm curious if that's there. I
mhm.
wouldn't be surprised if it is, but I'm
Well,
curious that we haven't seen any of that coming out, being like, "Hey, like, this is what's
mhm.
going on. That's where it's coming."
And two, another really crazy thing is last month. So Iran and China now have direct rail connections. Like the Chinese finished
Yep.
the rail system through Central Asia, so there's that as well. And so, I mean, this is kind of quickly turning into like a regional like. And two, it's like the big kind of so like the big thing that's really stood out to me is so and I'm pretty sure I sent in the group chat. Like they've evacuated all the closest air bases to Iran. They've evacuated them now. Like
Yep.
the staging is now at Prince Sultan in Saudi Arabia. So like all the bait, and I said that the other day where they sortied all the ships, and I think it was Qatar or Bahrain. I can't remember which one. So like they're acting like they're very afraid. I mean that's the big tip off to me too. Is it's like they're trying to get everything. I mean they're trying to stay close enough to where it's like feasibly they can do these operations, but it's also like it's clear they're very concerned about stuff close to it. And then the thing I kind of stop and think about that was like, okay, you've evacuated the air bases, but that still means all that oil, the shipping that goes through the Persian Gulf. That's you really can't evacuate that realistically.
Yep.
And then two, you got to think about like back in 2019, the Houthis conducted a missile strike on oil infrastructure and like I think it was like northeastern Saudi Arabia. So it's like we know they can hit it for sure, and that's a
Yeah.
stationary target. You can't evacuate, those refineries and stuff. So I mean, there's a very good chance, like if the Iranians wanted to, they could do considerable damage to like world, oil infrastructure. And then two, the other, we're talking about like tip offs. Like it's kind of relevant since I brought up the Houthis. Like the Houthis today issued a statement that said, if you attack Iran, we're going to join back in because they've kind of been out. They struck that deal with the U.S. last
Yep.
month. And then yesterday, the Israelis started doing airstrikes in Lebanon all of a sudden, and then it came out like, okay, the Hezbollah is starting to move like their artillery units in range of
Yeah.
Israel. So it's kind of like it really is quickly turning into both, a direct regional conflict, but then you've also got, like you said, like Pakistan's doing stuff, China's doing stuff. Russia yesterday said they supported Iran, but they're not officially supplying assistance. But it's also like, okay, wink, wink,
Yeah.
nudge,
They're
nudge.
helping out.
Yeah, I
They're
wonder.
doing something.
Yeah, I wonder what's going on there. And then two with the Pakistan thing. So that was really interesting. And I think I don't know if you saw that a few days ago. Trump met with their chief of staff in Washington.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, so the chief of staff of the Pakistani military was in Washington, had lunch with Trump, and there's something going on there. It is very
Like
weird to
who?
me that like all that stuff's going on. And then the thing with like at first when like it came out like Pakistan was supporting the Iranians, it was like, oh, that's just fake. That's just whatever. And then all of a sudden like I think it was their parliament came out with like an official declaration of support, and then there was some other stuff came out. So what I've been hearing is so India and Israel have really close relations. And so the rumor is that when the whole thing was going on with India and Pakistan last month, is the Israelis were doing cyber attacks on Pakistan at the same time, kind of in support of the Indians. I haven't, I haven't seen like smoking gun proof, but that's just the rumor. So this is kind of like payback for that. But
Mm-hmm.
also like Iran and Pakistan, they both have to deal with like Baluchistani separatists in those regions. So
Yep.
there's kind of like, okay, we help each other against that. And then two, like obviously that Pakistan doesn't recognize Israel because of the whole Gaza situation and Palestinian situation.
Yep.
So there's already those kind of like historical tensions, and then there's like, okay, the Israelis are friends with the Indians. We don't like the Indians. The Iranians help us in this situation. and then two, the Israelis were doing that stuff. And there's been all of a sudden, like I said, this is one reason I love paying attention to like foreign media when like stuff like this goes on to kind of see what
what
So
they're
there's
saying.
been so there's been a bunch of Israeli like I know one of them is like a lecturer at the Hebrew University, I think in Tel Aviv, and he's also an IDF reservist. So he's kind of like a fairly big, like, quote unquote expert. He all of a sudden the other day was like, after Iran, maybe we should go after Pakistan's nuclear program. So it was kind of like, okay, now it kind of okay. I see
Yeah,
what's going on here. So I mean,
well,
so this is
and that's why I asked about a coup, because I'm like, usually the ones who do the coups in Pakistan are the military, and they're
yeah,
usually more friendly to the U.S. than the
yeah,
people are. And so that's why when you said that, I was like, I forget who the guy was. It wasn't, it's not Sisi, he's the one in Egypt, but
yeah.
whoever it was, maybe it was Khan or whoever it was, like one or two ago, like
Imran
that's
Khan,
how it
yeah,
happened. Is military guy came in, coup d'etat him, came into power, and then you saw the shift more towards the U.S. and then he left, and then you see it shift a little bit more
yeah.
towards
Which I
the
think, if I'm not mistaken, right now it is like a military government there. But the whole thing with like India last month, like I do think like it that could that could be what's causing that to change because it's like yeah, I mean we like the U.S. and whatnot, but like those Israelis they're really friendly with the Indians and we really
yeah
don't like the Indians, so it's kind of like okay, this is our get back.
yeah
And then two, it's just like I, I do think the fact that like we now have multiple overland routes to Iran from China, and then how close Pakistan is to China and Iran, it's like, yeah, okay. Well, I think there's obviously so many like plays going on right now, and I mean, two, and then two, obviously like the big risk factor is like, okay, like even if you're not directly involved in this, like I said, like I think it's like a third of all oil in the world goes through the
yeah.
Persian Gulf, so it's like, okay, no matter where you're at, this is going to have an effect on you. So
Yeah. So I want to talk about Europe because I think they tried brokering something. But so I want to talk about Europe and then we'll talk about kind of like the broader implications because that's one of the things that I was kind of posting, I think this morning about like the urea and some of these kind of things. Oil obviously would be another one. Some of these kind of commodities that are coming from that region. But with Europe, weren't they like trying to broker a deal or something like that to like not have the US get involved or something like that? I thought they were trying to do that, and then like Trump basically was like, fuck off.
So yeah, so they had like a meeting in Geneva, but like the Europeans are very obviously doing a double game, and I think that's part of the problem here. So like it came out, I think it was Reuters reported the UK delegation like literally handed an ultimatum from the US to the Iranians. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, you're immediately coming in with that, and then so we know, so like the French all last week were like, yeah, we'll support Israel, we'll move stuff in, and then this was really funny. I don't know if I really should have made sure you saw it, but I can't remember if I seen it. So the Germans were like issuing like Merz has been repeatedly saying like we can't tolerate a nuclear program in Iran. There's just no way we can tolerate that. But then all of a sudden last week, a Luftwaffe air tanker accidentally turned on its transponder over like Jordan.
Mm.
So then everybody's like, oh, okay, yeah. So you guys you're doing the same thing the US is doing, like you're helping
Yeah.
refuel their strike craft. So then and then today they're just like not even hiding it. Like there's been multiple like German aircraft like operating. Somebody made a really funny post and like it was like, it only took them 80 years, but finally the Germans are east of Suez. So, so I thought
Yeah.
that was kind of funny.
Well, I saw someone being like, because of this and Russia, they were like, Germany's starting to reindustrialize and rearm, and they're like, I don't know if that's a good thing because historically that's never been a good thing. And then they're like, but on this side, this time it looked like they're on our side, so we're okay with that. And I was like, it's like, yeah, well, But I think what's also interesting with that is I don't know, and maybe this is something I should do. The kind of what you're referencing is I would be really interesting to see what the domestic politics in that looks like because,
And
we think we have a Muslim issue here in the US. I mean, France, Germany, UK have huge Muslim populations,
mm,
especially that
oh
region,
yeah.
Syria and whatnot. And so I think it's going to be one of those where I don't even know if we could bank on them for support because I think they're gonna be like, look, we've got 20% here that we can't fucking deal with. 10%, whatever it is.
So I don't know if you saw this yesterday. I know I said in the group chat, but I don't know if you saw it. They have like I can't remember what the official title is, but something like Palestinian Action or something. It's like a pro-Palestine organization in the UK. They broke into a RAF military base and sabotaged a bunch of aircraft. And now the British government is moving to prescribe them, which like forbid them as like an illegal organization. Like I think they're actually going to designate them as terrorists because of it.
Yeah.
And that was like they literally broke into an airbase and were sabotaging aircraft. So I mean, like
Yeah.
stop and think about that, how crazy that is for a
Well, that's
second.
what I'm saying is like I don't, I think they don't want this conflict. I think naturally they're just like we don't want to have this conflict. But I think the second part is not only do we not want it for stability, but we don't want it because the domestic politics here is just going to be terrible. And it's
Well,
like we're not. I mean, they tried doing stuff in Iraq and Afghanistan and like like I think it was Spain is once they had their bombings from who was Al Qaeda, they were kind of like, yeah, like we're not so sure about kind of being in this whole, anti-terrorism fight anymore. And they kind of started pulling their troops out, and I could totally see it being the people, but other three states.
well, I mean, think about it too, like this. So, like, I know I've sent the chart in the group chat. So, like, I think it was either Deutsche Bank or it was Goldman Sachs that did release like a paper like a couple weeks ago. I think right after the thing started, it was like, yeah, in the case where like if they shut down the Strait of Hormuz, oil will go to like I think it was between 120 and 140 is what they were estimating, and we've not seen oil that high since like 2008, and
Yeah.
that's now widely recognized as a big reason 2008 was so bad was because the energy costs got so high.
Yeah.
So it's like you thinking it's bad now, wait until there's like another recession, and that you're talking about like water effects with like the urea and stuff. Like that's the one thing I'm thinking about because like we're already like one big thing that we're already seeing is in the past, whenever there's been like a geopolitical crisis, most people went out and bought U.S. bonds because that's the safe option, that's the stability option. We're not seeing that this time, so people
Yeah.
are not wanting to hold U.S. debt, and it's like, okay, so that safety option's out, and then if you're thinking, so and I think there was I thought I said in the group chat, I might not have, but like there's already some signs that inflation's about to start heating up again.
Yeah.
So you add all like more than doubling in price, like yeah, that'll. So I mean, there's going to be like significant effects from this. And then too, the thing I think about is like, I don't even think we, that whole Iran thing is like kind of distracted us from it. But like it came out now, they're like estimating like the protests the other week were like the largest single day protests in U.S. history, and that there wasn't even a war going on then to like cause that. So it's like if the
I've got grievance with that, but like I
yeah, I
get
know
the direction on that. I think is still the
it's
right direction.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Or it's not the right, but it's a significant direction of like
Yeah.
where things are kind of going.
Well, I don't know if like I've not even been paying attention to it, but like apparently like last night they caught photo like DHS is still flying over drones over Los Angeles right now,
Oh yeah, I'm not surprised.
and then there was like I think I was in the group chat like they had like somebody like rammed like a bunch of DHS vehicles and there was like a big like fight and stuff. I mean, there's still stuff going on out there, and then the thing I kind of stop and think about is like okay, we're talking about water implications. You've already got this kind of we can quibble over how big it is. I think we can agree it's at least a fairly sizable, like
Yeah.
nascent protest movement. So it's like you've already kind of got that in the background over stuff completely unrelated to this. And then the thing I kind of think about is like, okay, if tomorrow we wake up to like $12 a gallon gas, which is in theory feasible if like it gets the maximum like level if they're saying it does. So like we get into a situation like that, and then all of a sudden inflation's back heated up. The economy starts wobbling. Economic chaos and unpopular war on top of that already kind of existing protest movement, like it could get really bad here too. I think and that's something
Well, that's why I want to go to Josh on this because I know he's much better on at least maybe well I don't say he's much better, but he's at least more kind of like where the political
yeah.
implications are going to be. Like he's like Josh. I hate to put you in this situation, but you're going to be the one who's going to say, "Hey, like, look, we still need to, elect these more right and conservative leaning politicians." And I mean, what do you think the implications of this, just of all these downstream effects, will be in 2026?
Like from just like what we're talking about with like the war stuff, or are we talking like
I
elections?
think just the war, I think that getting compounded with the ICE stuff, and then that getting compounded with potentially inflation and oil prices and a lot of these other things kind of going back up.
Oh, dude. I mean, it'll be interesting for sure. The thing I think and again, I don't mean to go full on political side of it, but like, I genuinely think it's going to shape the messaging for all political campaigns and policy moves that we see over the next year and a half, at least, if not
Yeah.
the next 4 or 5 years. But I'd say this is going to be the big thing. And like Austin said, I think we'll see today a little bit from it. But it's so weird. Dude. I'll be honest, man. Like I said, I stand with the state of Israel and the place, but dude, that government can. I hate it. I hate them. They're
Yeah.
incompetent, bro. I'm so tired of funding that country, and we shouldn't be doing this. I wish we'd just stay out of it. It's not our fight, bro. Like we're just giving political power to like a bunch of random people that are going to try to run for office for this shit. I don't know.
Hey, I want to cut in real fast. So there's now reports on the wire that there is some sort of ground assault at Fort Al. So the Israelis are
Oh,
attempting
my
some
God.
sort. They are attempting some sort of ground operation at this moment.
Like I said, I think that's what it would have to be. Is Israel's going to have to go down and do it, because I don't think they can rely on the U.S. to do
So
anything,
it's-
and I don't think they can rely on the U.S. to drop
Yeah.
anything.
So
Blitzkrieg.
Emily, gosh, Emily Schrader, who is a reporter for Ynet News, which is kind of a big Israeli paper, saying, let me just pull it up here. So Iranian sources are reporting some kind of ground attack on the guards at Fort Al. So earlier there was reports that there was recon drones over the area. This report comes after Israel warned the U.S. they may not be willing to wait 2 weeks for the U.S. decision on entering the war.
Yep.
She's saying she's not sure if it is full context. She's saying, I find it unlikely this is IDF activity if the report is indeed accurate, but if there is something going on, who else could it be? I mean,
I think you would know if it was the U.S. just because
Yeah.
the scale of that would have to be much larger. But I think what's interesting with that is even then, like when they were talking about it, they were like, hey, like NORAD and like the Cheyenne Mountain, like that is what the equivalent of this is in Iran.
Oh yeah, so
and they're like, if you send ground troops in, you still got to get into the thing, like they're gonna lock that shit up, and I don't know what you're gonna be able to do to get into that.
If I'm not mistaken, the main centrifuge hall, which is how you like enrich uranium, is like 80 to 90 meters under a mountain, which is like, what is that, like almost 500 feet, 400 feet?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of why there was talk of like, well, I guess we'll have to use a nuke or something, because like it's about the only, and with the thing with these bunker busters, the reason they're going to have to like keep dropping in the same spot, each one of these, I think, is rated to, I think it can go about 20 meters deep is what the estimate I've seen. So it's like, okay, drop 20 meters, drop another 20 meters, just keep trying like that. And that's kind of then too, it's like, it came out with like last month where like the Houthis were getting shots off at like the F-35s. Well, if Iranian air defenses are starting to recover, they're getting that help from the Chinese, like, you have to like maintain the same level course, the same, like it's going to get predictable if you're dropping bomb after bomb. And at that point, like it's not going to be that hard to mess it up. So,
well, and that's why I'm so worried about this. I mean, I'm not necessarily worried because, I'm still, I guess, leaning more towards the Democratic side on things, but I'm just like, like, I don't know how you're going to be, I mean, I pick on Tim Burchett, Josh, and, the reason why I pick on him is because I feel like he's been doing more fundraising than he's ever done before, and I feel like he knows, some of the domestic policies, and I feel like he knows some of this other stuff's happening, and he's like, look, I mean, we saw it in, what was that, early 2025 with all the huge shifts from the right to the left down in Florida and whatnot. And it's like, look, I mean, if you throw a war on top of that, a lot of these uprests, like, I mean, I don't know how safe is anymore. I don't know if, what would be a 10 plus Republican district is now like contestable, and that's why I'm like, I don't know what you're gonna see, even if that happens on the political sense. Because it's like, I don't like Trump's still gonna be able to do what he wants to do, but I don't know what Democrats would even do if they even get into even the House or the Senate. Like, what could you even do in this situation? I hear some planes flying over, and I'm in Columbia, so maybe maybe they're heading over that way too. Maybe they're mobilizing.
Not as important, but so one thing I am noticing is like, we're talking about the political angle of it. There's been some really big features and kind of like the riot too, because it's like there is a very large and like active like anti-war segment on the right. I mean, like probably the biggest proponent of that is Tucker Carlson, which I don't know if you get like me and you were talking the other day about like where he had that interview with Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz,
so
Bannon, and all them.
Which I just saw it. Like Theo Vaughn did
one with O'Connor.
Well, he also just did one with Thomas Massey.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I just saw that. He just posted about that. So I was like, okay. So I mean, like you're kind of already seeing some like early moves to be like, okay, like obviously you would say probably the most like anti-war Republican is probably Thomas Massey. So like Theo Vaughn's kind of and then you got Tucker Carlson. So you are kind of seeing like mobilization. Like okay, if this goes down, like. So I mean, it's.
Well, but the only thing with Tucker though is I think he was saying all this, but then he was like, if the president decides to attack, we believe in the president, And I mean, like if you listen to his interview with Ted Cruz, they're like, how can you support this attack on Israel and blah 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 blah. Now I think Trump's going to do the right thing, and they would always kind of go back to that position, and so that's why I'm like, I don't think the elites are going to leave immediately, but I could totally see kind of those. Not only the independents are gone if they're not already gone, and then I think
they're going to wait to see how it goes.
Deterioration of that Hey, I'm definitely going to vote for Trump, but that more conservative right nonviolent movement is going. And then you see Tulsi, and I think that's you're talking about Theo. I'm thinking, Joe Rogan's got a hard on for Tulsi Gabbard, and it's like Trump is already thinking about getting rid of Tulsi. And so it's like because of all this stuff, and it's like you get rid of her, now you got people like Trump or Joe and some of those other people going. And it's like your coalition is just going to be down to your strictly 30%, maybe 40% MAGA base.
Well, then too, the thing I don't know if you saw it today. Like I think it was either yesterday or today. I want to say it was today. Like Tulsi came out and was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't actually." That report, like I was, things have changed since then. So she was kind of having like Colin Powell moment, and it was just like, you guys, like, you get how this looks. And then there was, I think it was NYT came out and was like, yeah, like the U.S. intelligence assessment before the start, it was like, yeah, they're definitely not, building a bomb. And then the whole, like, apparently somebody leaked to, I think it was the NYT or Wall Street Journal was like, yeah, like they keep saying this, but that's just coming from Mossad. Like they're directly just repeating what, Israeli intelligence is telling them. So it's like, guys, like you're walking into like the point I go back to is like, if you thought Iraq was bad, Iraq didn't have a strategic missile arsenal. They didn't have 90 million people. They weren't, Iran's a third the size of the United States, and it's mostly mountainous and desert. So it's like probably about the worst possible place you can get dragged into something. And, they keep, well, we could just do, we could just, yeah, it's like,
more radicalized population.
Yeah. And then too, that's a really crazy thing too. I'll get to that in a second, but like the point, like, we keep saying like, oh, we can just do these air campaigns and we won't get dragged in. It's like, guys, we got dragged into Syria. We've been there for nearly a decade now. We didn't even do a bombing campaign there. We've still got troops on the ground in Syria. And then it's like, what happened with Libya? Because at the time it's like, oh yeah, we toppled Gaddafi with just this air campaign. That's great. And then what was it, like a year later, like our embassy gets attacked? I mean, we're getting dragged.
The way you have to do it is literally you have to do, was it Gulf War I, where you have to have a whole huge coalition, and you would have to basically wipe out all of the important infrastructure. You'd have to wipe out all their defenses and kind of not do a decapitation like Israel's doing, but really deteriorate their capabilities. And like you said, like Iraq and Iran are two different geographies. Iran doesn't have exposed missile launchers like Iraq did, and it's like, I don't know, like, and I don't see Saudi Arabia hopping in. Like that's one thing that some of the foreign people were saying it, or foreign national security people, is they're like, if this was 2001, 2020, we could see Saudi Arabia coming in and being like, hey, we're going to get in on this. But it's 2025 and there's no credibility. And they're like, and deals have been brokered with China between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And they're like, I don't think you're going to see any Middle East support coming in for Israel on this one.
About the best they're letting us do is use the bases. And it's like, how long are they going to let you use those bases if like they can't send oil out? Like the Iranians are making sure. I mean, there's a lot of capacity for pressure here. And then too, the thing I think about with like, you mentioned earlier about like the population, like that has been one of the craziest things to watch. And like, because before everybody's like, yeah, if we just do some, that was a big kind of like cope I saw. Was like, if we just do enough bomb dropping, it'll be like Gaddafi. They'll just overthrow comedian themselves. And then now you're seeing like, I think it was Times that Israel had a report from like Israeli intelligence. They were like, yeah, we're actually seeing signs the regime is like strengthened now because the population's like, you attacked us. Like,
Well, and that's the thing that, and before I want to say this, and then I kind of want to go back to that coalition of Trump's, because I think that's ultimately what's going to weigh on if he does it or not. Is and you kind of see it with Tucker, but I'll talk about that in a second. But I really think, I don't know if I definitely think they're hardening. I mean, because this is basically going to be a 9/11 to them, right? Like I think they're going to harden and strengthen up. But I will say is I think there's definitely turmoil in the population, right? Like I think they're definitely. I mean, you saw that when Trump was like, "Get out of Tehran," or Tehran, and everyone's kind of heading out, and you see all that kind of turmoil. I think that's still significant, but like you're saying, like I think on average, I think maybe the what do you ever want to call it? The government is strengthening.
the sentiment, yeah. And like, even like, so like, the thing with like the Iranian like opposition, it's not like a unified opposition. So there's kind of like
It's more ideological, right?
there's variations. So like like I said in the group chat earlier, like apparently like members of Congress are now starting to talk to the
Oh, the
Pahlavis,
Shah's, yeah, the Shah's
there's
grandson
a,
at this point.
yeah. So it's like there's a monarchist faction, which is more more like they're conservative, but they're kind of more like Republicans. Like that would be
Yeah,
kind of the comparison I would use. And
they're
then
the PDB,
yeah,
the Patrick Bet David people.
then there's like a communist faction. There's like ethnic factions, and then there's
Basically, the military is a big portion of them, right? Like that's the really kind of wields a lot of that power, right? Or I guess the largest faction, like those who are pro-military.
So there's like the regular Iranian army, and then there's the IRGC,
Yep.
which is kind of like its own. But and then too, there's kind of like a liberal opposition. And the thing that's like I've been really paying attention to is like the biggest single factions of the liberal faction, and they've like I do know there was this like one really big academic. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's always been like a pretty prominent leader in that faction. He actually got jailed for several years.
Yep.
He issued a public statement. He's like, like this is my home. Like you've attacked it. Like I have full support to the government in this time. And then there was 4 different women because there's like a women's movement over there too, and they like one of them is even on death row. So like she's scheduled to be executed by the Iranian government. Even she issued a statement was like, yeah, like we cannot support this. Like like Israel has attacked us. You're doing all this in Gaza. Like full support. Like I can't remember how she put it, but it was like yeah, in this time like we're going to come together as like Iranians. And then I've seen video after video, especially of like women. There's been a very big emphasis on women. Like okay, like we've got all these issues with like the government, but like we're under attack. So this time
we're gonna take our hijab off and protest, and
yeah, and I've seen a lot of videos of like women like putting their hijab back on is kind of like a signal of like okay, like what. And then so like that Israeli report came out, and then there was some other stuff came out. So it's like, and then I think it was CNN World also like was interviewing like I can't remember if it was like Israeli or Western intelligence. And they were like, yeah, there's really no signs of like there's going to be a mass uprising at this point. Like it seems like they've kind of consolidated like. And then somebody I was talking to made a really good point. Like if you go historically and look at it, this is a very common thing. Like when World War I started, most of the socialists kind of like backed their governments like the full. Like there was like it was a very big thing where like like the SDP back then was more socialist than Germany, and like they got fully behind the government because they considered it like a defensive struggle. And like you saw the same thing in like France and like the UK and stuff. I mean, it's common. It's like it's kind of in a sense. It's like at the end of the day, yeah, we're ideologically opposed to each other, but then at the same time,
nation
like
of the party.
Yeah, this is our people, and like
so going back to I guess our people, right? Like the coalition. I mean, I don't know. I don't like who coalitionally, and Josh, I'm want to hear from you on this one. Is who coalitionally is really kind of the ones who Trump is having to worry about on if he is going to attack or not? Like who do you think is going to be the first one to kind of piece out from that group?
From like which groups you're
From
talking about?
like the from Trump's coalition, who's going to be the first one to jump if he attacks Israel?
Hmm.
Like and like we talk about the interventionalist and all those kind of people, but do you think like there's
Attacking Israel though.
or I'm sorry, attacking Iran?
Iran.
Yeah, do you think there's gonna be like a group that's gonna be like, no, this is too much?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's going to be people that don't agree with it, but like I can't imagine anybody removes himself. Unless it got bad. Like if it was just like attacking, probably chilling on the front end. But now, if it's like becomes like an ongoing like bloodbath, yeah, there probably would be a few that would kind of fall out of line there. But that's a good question. I don't really know who I could think of that would.
Who do you think's gonna? Who do you think would be some of the first defectors in the House and the Senate aside from Massey? Because you've talked with these people, so I'm curious. Like, who do you think is going to be the one to be like, yeah, like, obviously
I
they'll
wish I had
say
the
something
answer here.
publicly, but then they'll kind of be like, yeah, like we're gonna kind of back away from this one.
I mean, it's just not something I've really like. This isn't something I just walk into offices and be like, "Yo, where you stand against
I know, I
Iran?"
know that's not what you're
So
asking,
it's
but
like,
being like
so I
vibe
don't
wise,
know.
right?
I don't know because I don't want to say something and then feel like I did something wrong with it. I just don't know. It's we're talking members, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, like, so to give you an example, I think it was actually Duncan, the congressman in Knoxville before Burchett, is, he was the one who actually voted against the authorization of military force in Iraq. He's one of those guys. And so that's why I'm kind of like, do you think it's going to be like that district, say Knoxville, for example, that district being like, yeah, like I'm going to have to break with Trump on this one.
I
Well,
don't think it'll be Knoxville. Maybe some in Georgia.
You think so?
Yeah.
well, I mean, Burchett did put out that thing where he's like, yeah, about the War Powers Act. So I mean, like,
Yeah, but it's like, are you gonna actually follow through with that? Like, that's why it's like, he says that, but then he's like, yeah, I'm still all supporting Israel, and we're gonna support him to the last man, kind of a thing. So that's why I'm like, I really don't know who's gonna be the one to really kind of lead that opposition coalition from inside the Republican Party, other than Massey.
no. Maybe Green did. Marjorie Taylor Green might.
I was gonna say, wasn't she posting something being like, I don't agree with like
Yeah,
getting
I could
involved
see
with this
her
stuff?
start. I could see her starting a coalition that says no.
But like, how does that work though? Like, how does Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of break from Trump on that?
Did your guess as good as mine, dude? It's honestly suicide if she did. Um, right now, I mean, if you're gonna go against something Trump says right now as a conservative in Congress, you probably are gonna give somebody else a chance to beat you the next cycle. But maybe maybe like in 2 years they can oppose him on stuff. But I think it's too early, man. Opposing's
I
not a
thought
good thing, but
I
she
think I
could
saw
try it.
I think I saw who was Gates. I think I saw like an interview with him where he posted being like, uh, I think he said something like, "Why doesn't Israel and Iran both give up their nuclear weapons?" Like something like that, like something kind of more
Yeah.
off the wally. But I'm like, you're not really like in kind of like the
I
coalition.
mean, they don't want to touch it, dude. They don't want to touch it.
See, and
That's
that's why I
crazy.
feel like it's going to be those people. And like, if I was politically, I'd be like, this is what you want to do because when Trump's gone in 3 years, you're going to want to be able to inherit that base.
Well,
And
too, I think the conservative side of it is some of them, especially if you're like Tennessee or maybe like Northern Georgia, man, dude, you get these Bible Belt people that are like, that's their districts, dude. Like, man, dude, the way that religion, the religious hold has it, it'd be really hard to like come out against it, even though you probably could and not be a bad thing. But
those are like the Huckabees.
yeah, Mike
Yeah.
Huckabee and the boys, yeah, dude, no, they're.
which, by the way, I'm kind of curious. What did you guys think of that like text message? Did you read that?
No, I think I told you about that. I was like, this is planted. I was like, this is straight up planted. I'm like, first off, I don't know who you text, but I mean, who you text outside of us, but I'm like, I don't think I would ever text somebody that. Like, I mean, that was like purely like, God's with you, we're on your side, like some purely biblical shit where I'm like, you wouldn't say these things or have a normal conversation like this unless you were expecting someone to take a look at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like
I
it's
mean,
through an iPhone message. I'm like, really? Like that's how you're fucking communicating with the president? You're a fucking ambassador. You're
yeah.
sending like a freaking text message, like it's like your grandma. Like, come on, man.
The only reason I would find myself believing it is I've definitely gotten, I don't want to say messages exactly like that, but like that felt very much like a boomer wrote that. It felt
100%,
very much like a boomer.
100%.
So
There's people from your hometown or your home area up in Hilton's where Abby's from. Some of the people she fought, some of her uh, I don't want to say neighbors, but people in that community that I've met and followed me on Facebook. After Israel struck, it was like, this is the end times. God is with Trump. Praise be to Jesus. I hope you all repent your sins because rapture's coming and shit like that. And I was like, I personally have never seen anything like that. Like, people talk about like, oh, you got these crazy people and all this other kind of stuff, especially in the Bible Belt, like Josh was talking about. But I'm like, I've never seen that personally. And then I saw that from someone that like I've met in person, and I'm like, holy fucking shit! Like this is
The word rapture is not even in the Bible.
well, I know, but I mean, that
yeah.
doesn't stop them from saying it. You know what
So
I mean?
like it's the whole like dispensationalist thing, and then like there's just it's that one particular type of like Protestant like Christianity, which I'm a Baptist, like I'm a Southern Baptist, so like.
Well, dude, speaking of the Baptist, did you see where the Baptist convention's about to meet to include LGBTQ and let women be head pastors?
I had not. No, is that what
That's
that?
dude.
the opposite, where they were like, we're definitely like taking a stance.
No, so the Baptist convention is meeting to it. They're like, there's a good amount that wants to allow it, but this is where I get issues with like some of these like denominations. Like, I'll be honest, I'm not Catholic, but I respect like Catholic and even Orthodox Christians that have been around forever. It's like, dude, like you look at these denominations like Baptist, Southern Baptist, like I'm trying to, like you said, even Southern Baptist. It's like it's not even as old as America. Like it's a bunch of hillbillies that just like made shit up in like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
and then they do that, and then like they basically are just as much. I don't want to say a cult because that's not right, but you know what I mean.
well,
Like
it's not a
it's
cult,
just like a group think of like how a lot of them operate and maneuver.
but the Southern Baptist Convention had to hemorrhage. They had to hemorrhage 140,000 members last year. Like it's
so like
ridiculous.
the biggest, so that's kind of like how my church like is, because it's like the SBC is officially like the Southern Baptist thing, but like if you go look at it, like they've done a lot of like interesting like data collection on this and stuff. Like most churches in the South are now like non-denominational. They'll be called like the Southern Baptist, or like they'll be like the Baptist Church of so and so, and then they're like. But the way it is like most of like the churches in the South now don't even affiliate with the SBC. So the SBC is kind of like I think it only represents like maybe like a quarter of like Baptist churches in the South now. So it's yeah.
Presbyterian does the same thing. There was one when we were thinking about living up in Greenville. There was one that I looked at, and I forget what they call it, but it's like maybe it's not reformed, but it's something like it's some kind of like word that they use, and then it's like Presbyterian Church. And I like looked into it, and basically it was like, hey, we're Presbyterian, but we didn't like the whole social stuff, so we kind of like spun off into their own thing. And it was like you start seeing like those kind of divisions where like I hadn't experienced that before, and like it's not something that they publicize openly, but like you could look and see like, oh, okay, they're that kind of Presbyterian church. And basically what it means is, hey, like we said, we don't think women should do this, we don't think abortion's legal, we don't think gay rights, like yeah.
And the Lutherans have the same thing, because like the overall Lutheran Church is like really liberal, and then there's what they call the Missouri Synod, which is like, I mean, that's a very common thing in American religion. Like the original, and I think what is the one? It was like it's descended from the Church of England, but it stayed in America after the Revolution. Is it Episcopalian?
Anglican?
I know there's the American Anglican. They're probably okay. So there's like several. So there's the American Anglican Church, and then there's like, I think that's how the Episcopalians came about.
I was gonna say maybe it was Episcopalian.
And then like they've had a bunch of like offshoots and stuff. And then, so I mean, that's a very American thing. Is like you'll have like this one liberal, like the original, and then like all the offshoots tend to be like really conservative, like they broke with it. And then you're starting to see the same thing with the Methodists, because like I think the Methodist Church now is like 40-60, and like the whole reason they haven't got behind gay marriages because like all of like the southern churches and then like all the churches in Africa were like, yeah, if you guys do that, we'll break off and become our own
Oh yeah,
thing.
no,
So you'll
because this was like 1960s, 50s politics, where it's like
Mhm.
the North. It was like they were like like 1950s, 60s Democratic politics, where it's like we're all Methodist, but it's like you're a Southern Democrat or you're a Northern Democrat. Like
Yeah.
there's specific differences, and we're all going to say we're Methodist or Democrats or whatever it is. But it's like if
Mhm.
you really look, there's some key differences.
Yeah.
To just kind of like wrap this up because God knows what's gonna happen here in the next few hours. Um, I guess like let's just do some hot takes. Like what do we think? Is Trump gonna do it or is he not gonna do it? Given the information we see now, I'd say do you think it's gonna happen by the end of the week, or do we think that a decision's not gonna be made till basically 4th of July? What do you think, Austin?
I'll put it like this: they have 3 different U.S. carrier groups, either there or inbound. They have, like, I think it's two. I think the British are sending both their aircraft carriers. So in the next week, we'll have 5 different carrier groups somewhere in the region of the Middle East. We have, as of the last satellite images that came out, like almost 60 F-16s at one airbase in Saudi Arabia now. We're moving probably what is our entire active fleet of B-2 bombers into the region. We've got, the one big thing I've been tracking is the tankers, because like
Yep.
you really can't do prolonged air operations without tankers. So the other night, I remember when it first started, we were like, okay, there's 25. That's a huge signal. Today it's 58, or in somewhere in the Middle East. You don't move like, what is that, like? That's close to like I think 20%, 15 or 20% of the U.S. like tanker fleet is now in the Middle East. Like you don't move all this stuff if you're not intending to use it, especially with them moving the B-2 bombers. Like they're going to do something. I have no doubt in my mind.
Do you think by the end of the week, or are you gonna push a week?
Uh, if the B-2 bombers were in Diego Garcia today, I would say this weekend. If they're not, I don't see them doing stuff tomorrow right before futures trading opens. So if it doesn't happen in the next like 12 to 18 hours, I'm going to say it's going to be next weekend.
Okay. One quick question before I go to Josh. Do you see anything with, or have you been following anything? So that's active duty, right? With the tankers and everything like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have reservist, we have National Guard. Have you seen any of them getting called up or put on temporary?
I have been talking to as many, because I know a lot of reservists on it. It's like I have been keyed into that. I haven't heard anything yet,
Okay.
but that's not, most of the ones I know are in Tennessee National Guard, and then I know
Right.
some people. So I've also been talking to active duty to see if they've heard anything. So I
Well, that's
haven't.
why I was asking because I think Tennessee specifically does have some air refueling wings, and I think the one
Yeah.
out of Knoxville is air refueling. That's why I was
Well,
curious if you
yeah.
had seen anything with that.
When all that stuff happened like last year and back in 2023 with like the start of the Gaza stuff, they used Tennessee National Guard for a lot. Like the
Yeah.
Tennessee National Guard was one of the big ones they sent over. So that's one reason why I watched them very closely too. But as of yet, I've not heard of them activating any ground troops. So
Okay.
that'll definitely be something to watch for if that does happen.
So nothing yet on reservists or National Guard.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything yet on that front.
Okay. All right, Josh, what do you think? Anything going to happen this week, or you think it's going to get pushed to next week?
I think we'll see in the next few hours. I think really what happens today depends on what we'll see. But for the safe bet, I'm going to say next week that'll be the big ones.
Do you think and you think there's going to be any more negotiations thrown out there? There's been the talk of Iran coming to the White House, but you see anything on or not you see, but do you think anything's going to happen?
Negotiations was no, not at the current moment.
Okay.
Nothing on the front end.
Okay. Well, then I'll just close this out. I think we're too late in the game for we're too late in the weekend for something to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if something happened tomorrow or later tonight. I think if they do, it'd be waived. Obviously, like you're going to send a bunch of them, and then you'll send the next group and stuff like that. But if what you're saying is true, Austin, with the Israelis going down there in person, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the linchpin that needs to be figured out before, the US comes in. I think if the Israelis been like, hey, we tried going in there, we tried doing stuff in person and nothing happens, then I could totally see the US going in. Maybe not tomorrow, but maybe definitely within the week.
Mhm.
Cool. All right. Well, let's end it there and hold our wives and children, and hopefully nothing bad happens, right?
Amen.
All right.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
That's it.